Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's meeting. I will officially open the meeting at 9:31 a.m. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land in which we are meeting today, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia, pay respects to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters, and community. The meeting will be run in accordance with the DAP Standing Orders 2024 under the Planning and Development DAP Regulations 2011. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of the Planning and Development DAP Regulations 2011. Panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. Today we have a full panel of 5 members. Online we have Councillor Jennifer Catalano from the City of Swan, welcome. We have Councillor Charlie Zanino from the City of Swan, welcome. In the room to my immediate left we have Dale Page, Deputy Presiding Member. Further left we have Clayton Hine, Specialist Member, and my name is Francesca Lafanti, Presiding Member. We have one apology for this meeting, and it is Mr. Rod Henderson from City of Swan. There are no members on leave of absence. The minutes for this DAP meeting, as with other DAP meetings, will be available on the website. We'll be now moving to Part B, City of Swan, to deal with our item on the agenda. Members, can I have a show of hands that you have duly considered all matters before you on today's item? That is unanimous for the minute taker. Members, are there any disclosures of interest? I'll first go to members online and I'll ask whether this matter was considered at a council meeting. Was this matter considered at a council meeting and did you attend?
No, it wasn't considered at Swan.
Thank you. And are there any interest in relation to this item, general interests?
No.
Thank you. Members in the room, are there any disclosures of interest in relation to this item? There are nil disclosures of interest for the minute taker. We will now move through to the item. We are dealing with a lot 10, 236, 244, and lot 603, 274 Great Eastern Highway, Midland, a proposed fast food outlet. We have one presenter. We will first go to our presenter, Mr. Mark Ray. As you are aware, it's a 3-minute time frame. You have provided us material, and as you have seen, all members have read that material that's been provided. We'll be handing over to Mark for your presentation. At the conclusion of that presentation, we will have questions from panel members. Following the conclusion of that question period, we will go to officers at the City of Swan, and we have with us today Phil Russell. Welcome, Phil. And we have Shay, and I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, Rajkumar, sorry if that's a poor pronunciation, who are officers from the City who will be able to answer some questions as well. I'll first hand over to Mr. Mark Ray. Over to yourself.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Good morning, panel members and City's officers. I am representing the applicant this morning in support of the proposed GYG fast food outlet in the Gate Shopping Centre. I'm also joined by Donna Edmiston, Senior Development Manager at GYG. We are pleased to receive the officer's recommendation to approve this application subject to conditions, and we thank the City's officers for their collaboration and engagement throughout the application process. As outlined in the City's RAR, a comprehensive assessment of the technical planning, engineering and design merits of this proposal has been undertaken. In relation to the recommended conditions, we are agreeable to the conditions as drafted with the exception of condition 25. Condition 25 as drafted requires the lots to be amalgamated into a single lot prior to the lodgement of a building permit. We do request condition 25 is deleted. The reasons for our request are outlined in my presentation summary, but I'll discuss them very briefly this morning. We do acknowledge the existing lot arrangement is certainly unusual, and an amalgamation application is a relatively straightforward planning process. However, the condition does have wider implications from a legal and leasing perspective that is likely to significantly delay the delivery of this development if approved today. There are approximately 85 leases and 15 encumbrance documents registered across the titles that would either need to be formally amended or consent granted by the interested parties to effect that amalgamation. This is a time-consuming and costly legal process. From a planning perspective, it is our view that there's actually no planning requirement under the planning framework or need identified in the city's RAR for the lots to be amalgamated in connection with this development application. These lots are owned by the same owner entity, and the proponent's building certifier has provided us advice that the development can occur and proceed over the boundaries under the provisions of the National Construction Code. Separately, the owners are intending to undertake a subdivision and boundary realignment in the future to rectify this matter, and also to create a new freehold lot for the GYG development area, and they're also considering a second pad site fronting Grayson Highway. However, this is a separate process that has no connection to this development application. For these reasons, we respectfully request the panel approve this application and resolve to delete condition 25. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Panel members, are there any questions to this presenter? Yes, we're moving to member Catalano.
Hello. Do you know anything about the landscaping that's going to be proposed there at all?
We have provided a landscape concept, but we're also...
Oh, yeah, I've looked at that, but I just wondered if you knew anything about what kind of landscaping is going to be proposed, other than what's in that your report.
Not specifically through the details of what species that will typically...
How many trees, how many large trees were you going to put in?
Well, we're retaining 4 existing trees along the front boundary to Lloyd Street, and we're providing an additional 7 trees throughout the development area.
7 trees. And do you think they're going to be large trees or small trees?
That's the intention at this time.
What was that, large or small?
We haven't identified the specific species, so we'd have to determine that in the detailed landscaping plan.
Okay, so you don't know whether they'll be large trees or small trees?
I can't say with absolute certainty whether they'll be large or small.
Okay, all right. That'll do, thanks.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions at this juncture to the applicant? Please. Yes, over to yourself.
Thank you. Just to clarify the point you made about condition 25, what is the likely timing of you pursuing that lot realignment?
The owner, who we are appointed by separately, is engaged a project manager to give them advice about how they actually bring it together from a servicing and feasibility perspective. I would estimate within the next couple of months we'll be launching a freehold subdivision application.
Okay, so are you saying that if we were to try and compel an amalgamation through an approval now, it's going to be sacrificial because you're going to redo the whole boundaries?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? I'll ask a question that's along similar lines. We've had in the past other requests for something other than subdivision, and that's typically been a legal agreement that binds the lots together in terms of the functioning of the subject site, in this case the functioning of the subject site or the subject facility relies on the existing entry point of Lloyd Street and access coming off the existing access way and the roundabout. Can you provide any comments in relation to a different mechanism? And I'm conscious of your comments you've just provided, but I'm also conscious that there is no the triggers on the timeframes or other mechanisms that we're referring to are sitting beyond this, and we have no connection to whether that occurs.
It could be undertaken via a deed of easement. So it is the same owner entity, and that would deal with a reciprocal parking arrangement or a reciprocal access arrangement. But it would probably, our preference would probably be to have it time limited until we effect the new subdivision that we're proposing to do at the centre. That new subdivision would actually have reciprocal access and reciprocal parking easements connected with it. So I'd see a deed of easement or a legal agreement private legal agreement between the owner that allows that interim access arrangement until such time that we deliver the new lots.
And could you just clarify your last point, which you talked about a deed of agreement or a private legal agreement? Typically, those include the local government.
Yep.
You just referenced then between landowners. Could you elaborate further on that point?
I will caution by saying I'm not a solicitor. My understanding in relation to the easements, there's two types of easements. There's from a reciprocal access and parking easement perspective, there's section 195, 196 under the Land Administration Act, and that's a public access easement, and that's available to the public at large. But there's also an option under the Transfer of Land Act, section 136C, which is a private access easement or parking easement between private owners.
And you are?
That would be our preference.
Okay, now my questions. Thank you. Are there any further questions to the applicant?
Can I just
Sorry, Mr.
follow up on that? If it was the latter, presumably that could be dismissed between the two owners at some time in the future if they wanted to. So it could be annulled.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
I think it's the intention of that is actually to protect the owners in the event of the sale. So it's an encumbrance that's listed on the title, but it's something that could potentially.
It doesn't achieve what the city wants to achieve necessarily.
Well,
It
I'm not. Maybe we could hear from the city. I'm not actually sure what. There wasn't much commentary in the RAR. I think it's mentioned on page 6 about why the amalgamation is actually required. So it's from an access perspective, there are different mechanisms that we can explore.
Thank you. Any further questions at this juncture? If not, we will now move to city officers. Over to yourselves, Bill and Shane. Would you like to make some comments on what you have heard and any other comments generally in relation to the proposal for us?
Would you want to make any comments? Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you and we can now see you.
Sorry, yes, sorry. Selena here from the Swan.
Just one moment before you keep going. It's actually quite poor quality at our end. Is there any way we can improve the quality at our end? Okay, you might just have to go slower and slightly louder because it's coming through not so clear. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you better now. Thank you.
Is that better? Okay, right. Just wanted to touch with respect to that question about the condition. As Mark has said, we are not lawyers, but our understanding is if we went down the path of an alternative condition, an easement of gross would not be the most appropriate legal mechanism because they're both under the same ownership lot-wise. So an easement of gross has to be to the benefit of a different landowner. So that's not going to work. Additionally, the city would insist on being party of any legal document condition so that naturally that condition cannot be dissolved without the approval of the local government. What I would suggest as an alternative, because as Mark has said, you know, their intent is to do a boundary realignment and that it is going to be time consuming with the number of leaseholders, is could we do a time limited condition so that either the amalgamation or the boundary realignment has to be done either prior to occupation, which buys them time to actually do the construction, or within 12 months of the approval.
So I just missed that last bit you said. I got prior to occupation. I didn't hear the last.
Or within 12 months of the planning approval being issued. So that still buys a year or so.
Thank you. Is there any further comments you wish to make?
No, that's it.
I will now hand over to questions. Panel members, are there any questions? First, I'll go to councillors online. Do you have any questions at this juncture?
No, I did have a question on the condition 25, but it's been answered. So,
thank you. Members in the room, do you have any questions at this juncture?
Just wondering if the officers could provide the wording for that alternate.
Did you hear that request, officers?
Yes, We can provide that, yes.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from members? Yes, please. Member Dalpage.
Yes, just a couple in relation to conditions. So condition 4, in my view, duplicates condition 27 to a large degree. Are you happy for us to delete condition 4? I think the wording of condition 27 expresses the intent a little more clearly.
Condition 4, am I unmuted? Condition 427? Yeah. Condition 4 is prior to the OP car park conveyor is 27. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, yes, no objection to that.
Okay, thank you. In relation to provision of public art, on page 17 of your report or 22 of the agenda, you've mentioned that if public art is constructed on site, a section 70 notification will need to be placed on the title of the subject lot, but that's not captured in any of the conditions relating to public art. Did you want us to add an additional subpoint 4 under condition 18B to make this clear?
Yes.
Okay, great. Then I note on pages 7 and 8 of your report, you've included the advice of Main Roads in relation to signage, and you've included their requirements as recommended conditions 20 through to 23, but you've not included their advice note as an advice note in your recommendation. Do you think it's necessary to do that?
Look, it's relatively low risk as so far as advice notes are just that, they're advice notes, but there's absolutely no harm in having that included, so there's no objection to that being included.
Okay, thank you. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions essentially around conditions as well. These are fairly straightforward. And I'll first go to, they're all pretty much the same. So condition 3 refers to prior to a building permit as opposed to prior to construction. Am I correct in understanding this is because it deals with matters that are associated with the construction itself, including construction materials, recycling, and hence the reason for it to be prior to lodging the building?
Correct.
Thank you. Condition 5 has no timeline, just says to be in accordance with the approved plans. Do you, would this be typically the way you would prepare these conditions? And do you, and the second part of this, would you expect there to be a time frame, for example, prior to occupation on that, or are you comfortable with the way it's written?
The reason why it's worded that way is it's in perpetuity. If it were to be amended, we would have no objection, but we're satisfied that the other conditions pertaining to the provision of parking, so specifically I think it was condition 27 that we mentioned earlier, which requires those parking bays to be delivered, that is time captured as so far as it's required to be done prior to the occupation of the development. So condition 5 is really the maintenance of those bays in perpetuity. So we're satisfied with that. However, should the panel wish to amend that condition, we don't have an objection so that it's clearer.
Thank you. And my last question relates to condition 8 and condition 10. Both of those say prior to lodgement of building permit. I note in condition 8, it requires information regarding location of the bin store and bin collection areas, and that's to do with the waste management plan, and condition 10 deals with the landscaping plan. Again, my question is around, we see these regularly, and some of them are prior to occupation, some are prior to building permit. Can you clarify for me the rationale for prior to building permit rather than prior to occupation for both of those conditions?
So with condition 8, with to do with waste, the reason being is whilst information has been provided up front, that can change based on their business model. So typically with fast food outlets, that may result in a relocation of where the waste is being stored, and they are quite large waste bins. So that could possibly have implications granted possibly minor, but on the design. So that's why we've done that, so that it's not already constructed and then we're moving walls around and so forth.
Yep.
Landscaping, obviously not the same extent, but it does vastly depend on when construction occurs and what's available in nurseries and local species. That one, I don't object if it were to be changed prior to occupancy. It's just standard practice that we ask for that up front so that we understand, again, no implications on the design.
Thank you. Those are my questions. Is there any further questions from panel members at this juncture? If there are no further questions from panel members, we now move back to the agenda. There is a recommendation at the beginning of the right. It's a recommendation for approval. Is there a mover of the recommendation as written in the agenda? It is moved, Councillor Charlie Zanino. Is there a seconder to the motion? It is seconded, Dale Page. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to move the recommendation with the changes that have been identified. In other words, the condition 25 being modified, and the alternative is a time-limited condition, and also with the changes to, or minor changes to, the other conditions. Apart from that, I think that it's a well thought through development. I think it fits in with the landscape. You've got the other fast food outlets basically on the opposite side of the road on the east. So it fits in, and fits in with the shopping centre. I think it's great. It's something that is lacking in Midland, and happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Member, before we go to the seconder, typically with all of those changes, we need to have a reason for all of those changes. So if you're comfortable, I'll just go through them and you can determine whether you wish to be moving those and incorporate them in. So we'll just deal with them for clarity of minute taking. Amendment one is condition 25. That is your first one you referred to, which is a modification. And I'll go now to the officers if they can provide some language for that so that we're all clear about what we're referring to.
Yep.
Yes. All right. So just to be clear, the two options that we provided were both time limited. The more generous one, which is the one that I'm going to propose, is that within 12 months of the issuance of this approval, lots 10 and 603 shall be amalgamated or have a boundary realignment reflected on the respective certificate of titles. The amalgamation, so full stop, the amalgamation or boundary realignment shall occur within the 12 months.
So could you read that back, please, for us? There's minute takers attempting to get the language down, just to again assist the members.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking out loud that second portion might be redundant, so we'll just stick with the first one that I've said, which is within 12 months.
Yes.
Of the issuance of this approval, or planning approval, I should say, comma, lots 10 and 603 shall be amalgamated or have a boundary realignment reflected on the respective certificate of titles. Full stop. So we're saying it needs to be undertaken within the 12 months.
Okay. Member Charlie Zanino, is that what you're expecting to see? And I'll go to a seconder in a minute.
Yes, I'm happy to incorporate that. I dare say, just a question to the planning officer. is the 12 months, is that achievable within that 12-month period?
Am I unmuted? I'm sorry. Yes, I believe it is. It also doesn't cause delay for client, who I think ultimately that was their primary concern, that would delay the construction. So 12 months is you know, a realistic time frame. It's probably on the conservative side, but given the amount of land tenure and leases that the applicant has relayed, I think that provides adequate time to provide those options to them and to progress.
Yep, thank you. I'm happy with that.
Okay, so we have the mover for Amendment 1. Is there a seconder for Amendment 1? If there is no seconder for Amendment 1, it will lapse. So it will lapse, although just for members online, there is, I think the issue is around the language of that condition. And I might actually, at this juncture, which is unusual, I might seek a suspension of standing orders to get this clear. Is there a seconder for suspension of standing orders? It is seconded, Clayton Hine. All those in favour? It's carried for the minute taker unanimously. Suspension of standing orders to enable us to speak more than once. We're dealing with Amendment 1, and Member Dale Page did want to make a comment on that in relation to, I believe, the language of the wording of the condition. Over to you.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Yes, look, I'm not comfortable with that timing. I think it's a little restrictive. 12 months after issue of a planning approval, I don't think it's enough time. I would, from my point of view, consider that alternative wording, perhaps that reads lots 10 and 603 shall be amalgamated into a single lot on a certificate of title prior to occupation or use of the development, unless alternative timing is agreed by the City of Swan or unless superseded by a broader boundary alignment. I just think that that is more pragmatic in terms of timing, and it's not necessary until occupation of the development, in my view.
Member Charlie Zanino, did you want to make any comments or have any questions in relation to that suggested alternate wording as part of the amendment?
No, I'm happy with Member Page's, wording. That's why I asked the question of the officer, was 12 months realistic for them to be able to get that done within the 12 months? Because if obviously it's going to take 18 months or 2 years, then, you know, I'm happy to go with that time frame. So I don't have a problem, no.
Thank you. Could I just get the language that you said again, please?
Yes. Lots 10 and 603 shall be amalgamated into a single lot on a certificate of title prior to occupation or use of the development, unless alternative timing is agreed by the City of Swan or unless superseded by a broader boundary realignment.
Did the minute taker get that language?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we are moving back on this matter. We're still dealing with Amendment 1, and I will go first to the mover, which is Member Charlie Zanino. And as I understand, Member, you are happy for the intent of the wording to change to that's been read out by Member Dale Page. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Would you be happy for that to be the motion that's on the table as Amendment 1?
Yes.
Thank you. We will deal with Amendment 1, but I will first, I was going to resume standing orders to continue with the meeting. It is for the minute taker 10 a.m. and we are moving to resume standing orders to continue with the meeting. I'm moving back to yourself. Oh, sorry. Is there is a seconder? Seconded. All those in favour? It's unanimous to resume standing orders. We're back to yourself, Member Charlie Zanino. Is there a seconder to this alternate worded modification of condition 25? Is seconded. Dale Page. Mover, would you like to have any further comments in relation to this?
No, I don't think it's self-explanatory. I'm happy the way it is.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to Amendment 1?
Nothing further, thank you.
Any other speakers on Amendment 1? There are no speakers. Would you like a right of reply?
No, there's no need, thanks.
Thank you. We are going to the vote on a modification of condition 25. All those in favour? It is carried unanimously for the minute taker. We're back to yourself, Mr. Zanino. Member Zanino, would you like to continue with any of the amendments? You referred to a number of those.
I think the others were related to delete option or condition 4, which I think was agreed, as condition 27 was basically replacing option 4, so you didn't, condition 4, which we didn't need, and that was put forward by Member Page.
Thank you. I'm moving Amendment 2, which is deletion of condition 4. Is there a seconder for this Amendment 2? It is seconded, Clayton Hine. Would you like to speak to it any further, Ms. Charlie Zanino?
No, there's no need.
Would the seconder like to speak to it?
No, it's self-explanatory.
Thank you. Any other speakers on this amendment? There are no other speakers. I will go straight to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously for the minute taker. Back to yourself. Did you have other amendments that you wanted?
No, that was all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move to the seconder to speak on the substantive. The seconder is Member Dale Page. Would you like to speak to the?
Thank you, presiding member. Before I speak to the primary motion, I'd like to move a couple of additional amendments, please.
Yes.
The first of which is to include an additional sub-point 4 under condition 18B relating to provision of public art, and the wording is to state a notification under section 70A of the Transfer of Land Act 1893 is required to be lodged on the certificate of title to advise future landowners of the need to maintain the public art. That wording is contained in the body of the report. And the reason being is to align with the content of the report and to ensure the applicant is aware of this additional obligation if public art is provided on site.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? It is seconded, Clayton Hine. Would the seconder like to speak to this amendment?
No, there's no need to.
Is there any other speakers on this amendment? Would you like a right to reply?
No, thank you.
We are going straight to the vote. All those in favour? Against? It is carried 4-1. Would you like to continue speaking?
Yes, just to include an advice note, an amendment to include an advice note in relation to the main road conditions on signage. And the wording is to align with the body of the report to ensure the main road advice is clear to the applicant. I will read it through quickly. The operation of the proposed signs will be subject to a separate approval process. The applicant is advised that a formal application is to be submitted to Main Roads for assessment and approval. For application forms and supporting information about the procedure, please refer to both Main Roads policy and assessment guidelines for static advertising signs and policy and assessment guidelines for digital advertising signs, which can be found on the Main Roads website.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for this condition change? Sorry, this additional condition. Charlie Zanino, would you like to speak further to it?
No, I don't think it's self-explanatory. There's no need for me to add anything further. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers on this additional provision? No. I move back to the mover. Would you like a right of reply?
Nothing further, thank you.
We are going to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Back to yourself.
Thank you, presiding member. No further amendments from me. I'm happy to support the recommendation for approval. The use is a permitted use. It's acceptable if it meets the requirements of the structure plan that applies to the site, which it does. The city's design review panel has considered the proposal both pre-lodgement and during assessment. And I note that significant changes, including the whole reorientation of the building, were made to the proposal in response, and that the panel has concluded that the proposal achieves the requirements of State Planning Policy 7.0, subject to a couple of conditions which the city has captured in their recommendations. I note the impact on existing car parking that will result from this development, but I'm comfortable with the justification provided by the applicant and the findings of the traffic impact statement and the additional parking survey that was done. So all in all, supportive. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Yes, we're moving over to member Jennifer Catalano.
Thank you. I'd like to move an advice note, please.
Yes.
That the proponent, consider planting Marys, that's Corymbia calophylla, where possible, as part of the landscape work.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for this? It is seconded Dale Page. Would you like to speak to the motion, member?
Thank you. Just briefly, I mean, I've talked about Marys before, but this corner, if you're not familiar with it, is particularly treeless and desolate intersection. And I just think that every one of these development proposals that comes before us is an opportunity to start doing something really creative with our urban environment. And I think that, well, for a start, the trees that are there are not native. They don't provide any form of coexistent or habitat or anything for native birds and plants, and that, you know, for the ecosystem and the environment we live in. And I just think it's every time that one of these comes up, we should take that opportunity. We can't obviously change these desolate spots overnight, but we can start making small steps to trying to achieve urban environments that provide for business, but that also provide for people and that provide for other beings in the environment. And I've talked a lot about how important Marys are for the environment. I mean, shade and all that as well. But not only that, they're great survivors because they actually belong here. So, the spotted gums there, they are absolutely huge trees. So there's no argument about the size of Marys because spotted gums are massive. And so there's no size. There might be some issues about, gum nuts falling, but, there's plenty of examples here in Perth where, there's Mary trees in a commercial area that work quite well. So, obviously it's where possible. So, that's all part of the landscape work and the design. So I just think it's a great opportunity to bring back some of the environmental qualities that are so lacking from Midland and particular sites like this in Midland. And I'd like to, for us to start working on that with developers and proponents. Thank you.
Thank you. Second, like to speak to that.
Yes, very briefly, please. Look, I'm happy to second the amendment for inclusion of the advice note On the basis that the applicant has advised that they're yet to finalise tree species selection as part of the landscape plan that'll be worked through with the City of Swan. And the advice note is simply a request from the councillor for them to consider inclusion of marries. It's not mandating that at all. If it's considered appropriate, then the applicant can work that through with city staff. So it's really on the basis of that I'm happy to second.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers in relation to this amendment?
I'm happy to support Councillor Catalano's motion because it's only an advice note. I'm not sure that married trees are the most appropriate, and I would like to leave it to the landscape architect and the city officers to come to a decision around that. But as it's only an advice note, I'm happy for or to support the motion.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers in relation to this motion? Yes, Member Charlie Zanino.
Thank you through the chair. Likewise, look, I'm happy to support Councillor Catalano's motion because it is just an advice note. But my experience is that, these marri trees, and I understand where Councillor Catalano is coming from, need to be planted in appropriate locations. And I think that in this particular location, where it's a very high traffic area, where pedestrians, young children with push bikes or people in the car park, because they are very messy and the nuts can be very dangerous because they're round and people can slip or, it's just probably not that appropriate for marri trees in this particular location, but it can be considered. So I'm happy to support the advice note.
Thank you. I will make some comments. I support the advice note, and I acknowledge that there is a condition dealing with the landscape plan, and I would support this on the basis that it enables the landscape plan to consider the type of species of trees, both in terms of the site conditions and the functionality of the site. Those are my comments. I'm moving back to the mover for right of reply.
Hi. Yes, I just wanted to just add to the danger side of it. Look, I mean, I was up at Stratton this last week, and there's, some absolutely amazingly beautiful remnant marri trees up there, very old, and they're right next to footpaths, and people are happily coexisting with these trees. I mean, we don't get any complaints. I've never heard of any complaints, and in fact, they are an absolute. It's a joy to be in that suburb with those trees. So we can't be afraid of the environment we live in. This is where we are, and we have to work with what we've got. And what we've got is we're living in WA. We're living in the Perth Coastal Plain, and marries are fundamental to who we are. And if suburbs like Stratton, the people in Stratton can coexist with trees, with marri trees, then everyone else can too, I imagine. And obviously we're not going to insist on traffic being blocked or anything like that. But I mean, there's some pretty large trees down there, that's being proposed, and with the spotted gums, and they drop limbs, they do all kinds of tree-like things, and we'll put up with that. Now, why can't we put up with some locals? And so thank you. I want to say thank you for supporting the motion, but we shouldn't be afraid of honking nuts. Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously for the minute taker. Thank you. Any other member wishes to speak on the substantive motion? Yes, Clayton Hine.
I'm more than happy to support the development and the motion as amended. It meets the objectives of the planning framework, particularly the local planning scheme and the Midland Activity Centre structure plan. As previously mentioned, it's been through quite a design review process, and I think the outcome is quite good considering its location and the type of development we're dealing with. So I'm more than happy to support it.
Thank you. I will speak to the motion. I do have an amendment. My amendment is a modification of condition 10. It is changing the words prior to lodgement of a building permit, and it's prior to occupation. My reason for that change is to provide a suitable timeframe to prepare the plan, determine the appropriate species selection, and to undertake the installation, and that should be done prior to occupation, so it gives a sufficient timeframe for those to be done. Is there a seconder to that amendment? It is seconded. Dale Page. Does the seconder wish to speak to the amendment?
No, thank you.
Are there any other speakers on the amendment? Yes.
I have some difficulty with the proposition of prior to occupation, because if you want the landscaping to be in place by occupation, then it can't be achieved if the plan is still being developed prior to occupation. So I really have some issue around the timing there, and I think typically prior to lodgement or as part of the building license process, the plan is assessed. So for those reasons, I can't support the amendment.
Thank you. Is there any other speakers on the amendment? If there are no speakers, other speakers on the amendment, I will go back to the amendment. And I do understand the concerns that have been raised. I'm satisfied that the timeframe to complete the plan and to compile that detail does require a series of timeframes, and lodgement of building licence may cause some delays to the overall development. There's a significant time through building licence and construction, and for the applicant, in order for the applicant to address these and have the matters resolved, I'm comfortable with it being prior occupation. I'm leaving the modification as it stands. I will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? It's carried 3-2 for the minute taker. I will make some general comments on the proposal. I am supportive of the proposal. It is a good proposal for the use. I note and acknowledge that the applicant has had a number of considerations of the proposal through the design review panel, and the design has changed substantially through those changes. And I note the positive comments of the DRP in relation to the final design that we have before us. I'm also comfortable that the zoning and the planning framework for the proposal is suitable for the type of use that it is, and that the plans and material provided to us in relation to parking and access are appropriate and supported by the specialised studies that have been given to us, as well as I note in those instances the city's officers have indicated that they are satisfied with the findings and agree with the results and the outcome, and they are supportive of the parking shortfall. So that technical analysis has also been undertaken by city officers. Overall, I'm supportive of this proposal. Are there any other speakers on this item? If not, we move back to the mover, Charlie Zanino, for right of reply and close of debate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think there's anything really required. Happy to move, happy to incorporate all the amendments. I think it's a great motion, and I urge you to support it.
Thank you. We are going to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously for the minute taker. I will move back to the agenda. There are no Form 2 applications and there are no SAP reconsiderations. In Part C, the SAT applications are listed. I have no comments in relation to those, and accordingly I close today's meeting at 10:20 a.m. Thank you everybody for your participation.
Thank you.